And I just wanted to introduce myself to you. My name is Cristina Carreto de Soto. I'm born and raised here in Chicago in the neighborhood of Little Village. And I'm also a CPS alum and a mom of two. So I am very excited to host these sessions because I really see myself in the parents' shoes, right? And when I am hosting these, I'm going to be putting my parent hat on and asking our experts some questions that maybe the parents have. And we also have questions that were pre-submitted that we will be going over at the end of Dr. Fleming's presentation today. So let me just, oops, hold on. Okay. Okay, so some things that you should know. This session will be recorded and we want to share this knowledge with parents who aren't able to attend. So it will be available on our YouTube channel, our FACE YouTube channel. We will have a short presentation today, followed by a conversation with Dr. Fleming with questions submitted, like I mentioned before. And then we will also have the chat function open during this time so that participants can participate with us and interact with us. Please keep in mind that we might not have time to get to all your questions during the session, as we only have an hour and we want to be mindful of your time. So today we are here to talk to Dr. Fleming and learn more about what the district is doing to advance literacy during the pandemic. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. But before we do that, I want to remind you of the upcoming sessions we have in our Ask the Expert series. On March 18th, we're going to have Cami Pratt from the Title IV officer on protecting Chicago's children. And on March 25th, we're going to have Maurice Sweeney, the Chief Equity Officer, will be talking about leading with equity during the pandemic. All right. And then today's speaker, I have the honor of sitting down today with Dr. Fleming. Dr. Fleming is a director of literacy for Chicago Public Schools. Prior to her current role with CPS, Dr. Fleming served on the faculty at Erickson Institute. She is a proud Chicagoan and an avid reader, and she views her role as CPS director of literacy as the best and most important job she has ever had. So welcome today, Dr. Fleming. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can take over.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you, Carla, for your support. Thank you to the entire FACE team for the invitation to join you all today. And thanks to everyone who is on the Zoom meeting today for your interest in coming together to talk literacy. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Beautiful. So Christina, you talked about how do you support literacy during a pandemic? And one of the first things that we did when we discovered that we were going to have to move to remote instruction almost a year ago today, was we put into place a plan to ensure that students had access to lots of books for abundant reading. This was one of our high leverage strategies for really ensuring that we could continue with strong literacy learning during the pandemic and throughout remote learning. So one of the things I want to ask you to do just in introduction is to join in the chat and think about maybe a book that you've read recently, or maybe a book that you read from childhood or many moons ago that sticks with you. But just take a moment to jump into the chat and share one of your favorite books with us. And while you're doing that, I want to share with you some of the responses that we've gotten from students over the past year as we've asked them the same question. Christina, I'm not able to see the chat, but I want to encourage everyone to keep submitting and to just join in community in the chat and sharing your favorite books. Ah, there it is. Babysitter's Club.
I wrote my book right now. I wrote the Babysitter's Club, but I'm curious to see what other parents are reading at the moment.
Christina, they have that now in a graphic novel version. I don't know if you know that.
I don't. I've been reading a lot of Dr. Seuss lately.
I'll share just a couple more quotes to maybe inspire people to also share their favorite books in the chat. And then we can continue with the presentation. I love this one. One of the things you may see in our student quotes is that oftentimes a book sticks with our students or with us because we have a personal connection to it. We can see ourselves in the story or in the text, or because it sparked our interest, or maybe just made us laugh. But there are lots of reasons why readers connect to text, and we want to ensure that all students have access to a wide variety of texts for abundant reading, and that they have lots of choice to be able to choose texts that they're interested in. And we also want to ensure for Chicago public students in particular, that students are able to see themselves, their families, and their communities represented and valued in the text that we use for reading and writing instruction. And I'll share a little bit more on that in a moment. So today, Christina and I were hoping to share a few highlights of the new CPS pre-K through 12 literacy vision with you, and then get into some very just like practical tips for supporting literacy at home. We want to answer some of the questions that came in the preview with the RSVP, and then any questions that you have coming forward from the presentation, and then also share some upcoming summer learning opportunities that we want to make sure you know about. As we go, I want to encourage you just to share ideas in the chat. Feel free to connect with others who are on the call. If you have an aha, if something resonates with you, feel free to type it in the chat. Any comments, questions, just reactions, challenges to what I'm presenting today. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the evolution of literacy and to have us sort of go back into our time machines, maybe back to early days of school, really thinking about what early schooling was like in terms of the way school was organized, in terms of the kinds of texts that may have been used in our, one-room schoolhouses back in the day, thinking about who was included in those rooms and who was not, and then really think about how literacy has evolved over time, as schooling has evolved over time, and how communication has evolved over time. So really moving from the past into the 21st century, really thinking about what literacy learning is like today and what kinds of skills we want to ensure our students graduate from Chicago Public Schools with to allow them to be most successful in our global and digital society. I want to really think about the ways that communication has evolved over time, the ways that you maybe use language and literacy on an everyday basis, the kinds of tools that you use to communicate. This is what we're trying to get at when we're thinking about advanced literacy practices and the ways that the myriad of ways today that great communicators use language and literacy to get messages across, to persuade people, or to challenge injustices in the world. So really thinking about what it means to have advanced literacy skills in 2021. If you have any ideas about this, would love to hear them in the chat or see them in the chat. Just thinking about the ways that you use language and literacy in 2021. How has that changed for you in your lifetime, or maybe even in the past 5 years?
I want to remind everyone that our chat room is open for this session. I know many of our participants are not used to that, so please use our chat room and be interactive with our presenter today.
By breaking the rules, Christina.
No, we've just had Q&A open, and today we decided to open up the chat room. So I'm sure many of our participants who normally don't log in or who have been logging in are not used to our chat.
I understand. Okay. We'll want to share just a few details of the pre-K through 12 literacy vision for Chicago Public Schools. This is a new literacy vision that we have launched over the past year. So I want to make sure that everyone's familiar with the highlights. One of the things I want to emphasize is that during the pandemic, we really stuck with our core tenets of the literacy vision. So our goal during the pandemic was really to stay the course with high quality literacy instruction and really just get better at using a small set of ed tech tools for remote learning, but really sticking with the strong practices that we know will lead to advanced literacy skills. One of the things that is important as we think about how literacy has evolved is that being literate today is very different from in the past or even a decade ago. We want to ensure that students graduate from Chicago Public Schools with advanced literacy skills. It's not sufficient to have proficient or basic literacy skills in 2021. We want to make sure students can communicate in a wide variety of ways with a wide variety of audiences using all the tools that we use in the 21st century. Another of our guiding principles in the vision is that we know who our students are and we can better tailor instruction to build on their strengths. So we're really moving away from generic approaches to literacy instruction and really trying to better tailor instruction to our culturally, linguistically, and socioeconomically diverse student body, and really tap into our students' lived experiences as assets when learning to read and write. I want to share with you a brief video that will highlight some of the key shifts and practices in our literacy vision, and that features some of our district leaders. And hopefully I have worked out the sound.
What is literacy? Strictly speaking, literacy is the ability to read, write, and communicate effectively. But really, literacy is so much more. Literacy connects us to our rich histories, to each other, and to the world.
Over the next 5 years, we will focus on 5 instructional practices to ensure students across all grade levels develop advanced literacy skills. These practices include the abundant reading of diverse and engaging texts, extensive discussion, frequent process-based writing, real-world application of literacy skills through authentic learning experiences, and communicating and creating content in a digital environment. We know that reading growth happens when students have time set aside for extended reading and when they have access to lots of text in a variety of genres.
Through our focus on abundant reading, students in pre-K through 12th grade will read contemporary, culturally diverse texts that feature big ideas and rich content. We will encourage lively discussion in the classroom and we will help students make connections between their reading and the things that are important to them.
For students of all ages, exploring rigorous and compelling questions through abundant reading, writing, and discussion supports the development of advanced literacy skills. Texts will include a range of print texts such as trade books, ebooks, news articles, research papers, and poetry, as well as visual or auditory texts such as photos, diagrams, videos, audiobooks, TED Talks, and podcasts to reflect the myriad of ways in which we communicate in the 21st century.
To include engaging texts means that we are helping students explore ideas that matter to them. And so we need to make sure that we are incorporating questions and listening to what the conversation our students are having so that we can incorporate those ideas and those experiences and help our students grow in ways that benefit them academically and emotionally.
We need to make sure we have equity when it comes to opportunities we're giving them. And I think as a teacher, I always think about that I'm offering equal opportunities for all my students.
We bring abundant reading into the classroom. We're very aware of how much time, right, we have. And what does that mean in terms of how many books are we going to read? How much of that time are we going to spend talking about what we've read? And most importantly, also, I believe are we going to write about it?
With the help of Department of Literacy, we were able to secure books that showed cultures and characters from around the world. And so that was our primary focus, and that changed the dialogues that kids were able to have with each other, that teacher was able to have with students and the classroom as a whole.
My students are coming with more confidence now. They feel more willing to kind of lean into conversations that traditionally in person they weren't. And now using the text, they're using those to kind of support the decisions that they are making about, but also how it impacts them as individuals.
Literacy gives us the confidence to stand up for our beliefs, the skills to articulate our hopes and dreams, and the courage to make bold choices. Literacy transforms our lives and prepares us for success today and tomorrow. Literacy allows us to carve out our own pathways, seize opportunities, and navigate the modern world. This is literacy.
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 This is literacy in CPS.
Okay. Christina, I'm seeing a note that maybe the chat doesn't seem to be working for some people, so I don't know if we can check on that.
Yeah, I saw that, but it's enabled.
Okay.
IT's on, our IT department's on, so I want to make sure.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So in terms of our literacy vision, we're really focusing on 4 key shifts to achieve advanced literacy for Chicago Public School students. We're focusing on shifts in instruction, shifts on leveraging data, shifts on increasing access to high quality and culturally responsive resources, and shifts in the way we design professional learning for teachers. I want to just touch on a couple of points that might be of interest to you with respect to these shifts. Really with shift 1, we're really just focusing on really strengthening core instruction in the classroom, ensuring that all students pre-K through 12th grade have access to effective literacy instruction. We're going to tailor that instruction to our students to really capitalize on the cultural and linguistic strengths that they bring to the classroom. And we're expanding our focus to focus more on multiple literacies. That includes literacy in more than one language. It includes disciplinary literacy in science, social science, mathematics, computer science, and the arts, and really a stronger focus on digital literacy for the 21st century. As you saw in the video, we're really focused on those 5 key practices of abundant reading, extensive discussion, frequent process-based writing, rigorous learning experiences, and communicating in a modern digital environment. We're also really focusing on using data to improve the effectiveness of instruction. One of the things we're really dedicated to as a literacy team is establishing systems to accelerate learning and to close achievement gaps to achieve greater equity of literacy outcomes for students in the district. There are a number of different strategies we're taking to achieve that, including universal pre-K, ensuring that we're identifying early any students that are struggling with reading and writing, and putting into place systems of support that can really help them advance in their literacy skills. We have a new high school reading intervention plan, which is identifying students who are entering high school reading significantly below grade level and really providing the instructional interventions and supports that they need to catch up. And we're increasing our access to early college and college credit coursework through our AP programs and transitional English for community colleges. You may also be interested that we're really working hard to increase access to high quality, culturally responsive resources. We want to ensure that our students can see themselves in the curriculum, that they know that school is for and about them, and that we are really capitalizing on the language and literacy skills that students bring to the table as tools for advancing their literacy over time. One of the ways that we're doing that is through the Curriculum Equity Initiative. We are currently building a comprehensive K through 12 curriculum designed specifically for Chicago students. It will include contemporary, diverse text collections, and really will focus on units of study that have compelling, essential questions that students will engage in learning around, and discussion and reading and writing. That curriculum will be launched this summer, and many schools will be adopting it for the next school year. We're also really working to just increase access to text, both through text distributions, through building our classroom libraries and school libraries, and through increasing access through our ebooks and CPS digital library databases. I want to make sure that you're familiar with those and know how to access them. And we're also working to expand our community partnerships so our students have plentiful opportunities to engage in literacy enrichment activities. 21st century, there was a professional learning. I'm going to touch on this a little bit more in a minute, but we are redesigning professional learning for teachers to really capitalize on what we've learned from remote learning, using a variety of ways to reach teachers through remote and hybrid models, so that many more teachers across the district have access to professional learning through the Department of Literacy. I wanted to pause there, Christina, for just a minute, since I can't see the screen or the chat, just to see if there was anything that you wanted me to attend to.
No, we're good right now, but I want to remind people, or we have the chat open, but if you're having difficulties using the chat, please use the Q&A section to ask any questions throughout the presentation. Again, the chat is open, but if you are having difficulties, the Q&A section is open.
Excellent, thank you, Christina. So a few tips, people asked a few questions in the RSVP, and so wanted to provide a few tips about supporting students' literacy at home. The main thing we really focus on in the Department of Literacy, and our motto for students of all ages, is that we want to do more reading, more writing, more talking, and more thinking. We really want to keep it simple, and these are really things that you can focus on at any time, during your everyday interactions with the children that are in your lives, and we'll get a little bit into some specifics around that. But if you just keep that in mind, more reading, more writing, more talking, more thinking, that'll set you on a good course as far as supporting any young students in your lives. One question that came up was, well, that's a great motto, Jane, but it's easier said than done to motivate students to write. How can we get students engaged in more writing? And so I wanted to share a few tips here. One is a key sometimes to getting started as a writer is to use reading as an entry into writing. So one of the things we hear a lot of times from even very prominent authors or famous authors of children's literature is that they can point to a specific book and say, it was when I read that book that I knew I had stories to tell. So one of the things we really recommend is definitely doing a wide range of reading of lots of books that your children are interested in, but also ensuring that we're including in the range of books that they both have at home and that they are reading at school are books in which they can see themselves and their communities and their families represented. So they start to view themselves as authors. Sometimes seeing themselves in a book and seeing an author who tells a story that a child can connect to really prompts their interest and motivation for wanting to write their own stories. So reading lots of books, making sure students see themselves as authors, and opportunities to write about things that are relevant to their lives. A couple of the other tips is, particularly for writing at home, we will, it's our job to take care of the teaching of writing of a variety of genres. We teach narrative writing, informational writing, persuasive writing, poetry, and we also will support students in the development of their craft and structure and grammatical skills. We don't want you to worry about perfection at home. The main thing is productivity, just get the writing flowing. And so towards that end, it is fine to think traditionally about writing essays and stories or informational texts, but we also want to think broadly about what counts as writing. So any kinds of lists or letters that you can write with young children. If your child likes to draw, having a drawing journal that then is sort of captioned or at times, almost illustrated and narrated. Thinking about photojournals or creating infographics in terms of 21st century literacy. If your student is an artist, maybe creating art, but then captioning that art to tell the story of what it represents. And then any kinds of digital literacy interests that your child may have, recording or narrating videos, forgive my typo there. We really want to think about a wide range of opportunities to write, to tell stories in a variety of ways that will really contribute to students' interest, motivation, and productivity as writers. In terms of wide access to texts for abundant reading and to engage students' interest, I want to make sure everyone's familiar with our CPS virtual library resources. We have tens of thousands of high quality books available in the CPS virtual library. And we also have numerous databases where students can do research on topics of interest, engage in reading and writing, sort of games that support reading and writing development. There's a wealth of resources in the CPS virtual library. The username and password are on the screen. Any kindergartner can log into our system, and hopefully most of us 50-plus-year-olds can remember that password as well. I want to make sure in terms of access to texts, particularly while we're still in hybrid learning or remote, For some families that you can access the Chicago Public Library through a free e-card system. Christina, will participants have access to the deck?
Yes, tomorrow they will receive all the deck and along with
fantastic.
all the links you have.
Beautiful.
And I'm also including all the links that you're sharing in the chat. So they are getting them as you are presenting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So just wanted you to be aware that you can still apply for a CPL e-card if to access Chicago Public Library ebooks and all the resources there. Chicago Public Libraries are open to in-person visits on a reduced capacity basis, but all Chicago Public Library branches are open at this time. We also put some links in here to a variety of resources for video read-alouds there's just a wealth of video read-alouds that have been created by CPS librarians, by librarians at the Chicago Public Library. We have a partnership with the University of Chicago's My Very Own Libraries group. And there's a link to Authors Everywhere, which is another site that links you to authors, in many cases, authors reading their own books, or local CPS librarians, or even some celebrities reading books through video read-alouds. They're really fun. I would really encourage you to explore those. We also put in some family reading guidance that we distributed this past year to support remote learning, but these tips can be used at any time. So there's a link to some tip sheets here that you can take a look at if you need or are interested in a place to get started with your children. I want to make sure too that you're aware of literacy learning opportunities for your older students and teens. The Chicago Public Library YOUmedia program is specifically designed to support engagement in literacy activities, abundant reading and writing, and digital literacy for teenagers in Chicago. It's a really terrific program. There are many YOUmedia sites across the city, and you can find where those are on the Chicago Public Library website. This is another very important one that I want you to be aware of, the My Future website. We have a citywide program called One Summer Chicago, and there is a one-stop shop website, My Future, that lists all kinds of resources and opportunities, including summer jobs for teenagers, resources around mental wellness. There's lots of do-it-yourself projects for students who are interested in exploring a new hobby at home. There are virtual field trips and other kinds of experiences. There's lessons in coding, there's games, and much, much more. It's really a wealth of resources. And so for you and for your older students, I'd really encourage you to explore this website. And in particular, if you're looking for summer learning opportunities or summer jobs, this is your one-stop shop. Also coming very soon, we're working on an extensive menu of summer learning options for Chicago Public Schools. We are expanding our summer programming for 2021 to include a range of summer learning options that we hope will reach every student in Chicago. There are programs for young children, including our pre-K preview for students who will be entering pre-K in the fall. There's a kickoff to kindergarten program scheduled for those preschoolers who are transitioning to K. There's our Summer Bridge program. We are expanding to include grades 1 through 8 to provide support to students who didn't have as much success this year with remote learning, to ensure they get the boost that they need to enter school in the fall better prepared. We also have programs for older students, our Freshman Connection program, which helps with the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade. And this year we are adding a sophomore step up because many of our incoming sophomores for the following year, for the fall, haven't had an opportunity to be in school. So we want to ensure that those students have an opportunity to connect with teachers and peers and get some support and really a step up for the fall. There's also a number of expanded programs for English learners and for our students with disabilities that are in the works. And we are partnering with external organizations also to provide a variety of enrichment opportunities. There will be a menu of daily read-alouds, daily video read-alouds and family activities for young children. We have a 3rd through 12th grade book club program that many schools will be taking advantage of. There's a high school reading support program that's currently scheduled to be run in 13 high schools. And we have some other programs in place to get students a head start on that early college credit access, including AP language. So that all is forthcoming. We want you to definitely take advantage of summer learning opportunities, but even if you're not connected to a structured opportunity because you know, your student is more of a homebody and an avid reader and wants a little break from academics over the summer, just want to keep in mind, we want everyone doing more reading, more writing, more talking, more thinking, even on kind of an informal basis. That will really continue to fortify students' reading and writing skills and language development and help to reduce the summer slide that we sometimes see when students are away from schools or not connected to academic programs. So Christina, that's all I have for content. So I was hoping we could move into some Q&A, and I did put 2 questions that were in the preview in the slides. Should we start there? Or what do you think?
I have some more questions that came in. If you want to stop sharing your screen, and then we could move more into a chat format between you and I, and we could go over some of the questions. But all this information was great, Dr. Fleming. I feel like there's something for everyone, no matter what age or your background or the needs of your family. You provided so much information for, I think, almost every family in our school district. No, like I said, no matter what grade level they are in, right? So,
thank you, Christina.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know when we were going over this, like, we wanted to make sure that even high school students had some information, because I feel one of the first questions that we received is, how do you motivate students to write? But you answered that question, but we also had questions about high school students, right? Like, how do you get high school students more involved in literacy? I think it's sometimes easier for younger kids. Like I said, you know, we've been reading a lot of Dr. Seuss and, you know, a lot of kid book. We like younger kids, right? Bedtime, you read books to them, but that somehow stops once you hit the high school grades, right? So what are some tips that you have, again, for older families who have older children?
It's a great question, and I think some of the same principles apply that we covered maybe for younger children as for older children. One of the things, particularly with reading and writing, I think at home, is that choice is really important, right? One of the most important factors in driving students' reading and writing development is interest and motivation. When students are interested in something, they're going to engage more frequently in that activity. So if it's, you know, they're interested in what they're reading, they're going to read more. And really with reading, practice actually does make perfect. You have to read more to get better at it. And I think so for older students, really, first and foremost, ensuring that for any leisure time. Certainly there are things that we require for school reading and writing. But for any leisure time at home, we want to really ensure that students have access to texts that they're interested in, that we're allowing them the choice to read what they want to, and really thinking about the writing piece too. And this idea of digital literacy and 21st century writing, I think I gave it away a minute ago when I said the older 50 crowd, but literacy has changed significantly for me in the course of my lifetime. Whereas, teenagers today are so capable with the kinds of digital literacy, oftentimes very capable with the kinds of digital literacy and technology that we use to communicate on a daily basis in the 21st century. And so that's where too, I wouldn't shy away from really exploring those digital literacy tools and ways of communicating. So a lot of times we think about, traditionally old school, sitting down and writing, your 5-paragraph essay or, kind of traditional piece, but really we want students to explore communicating and creating content in a modern digital environment. So some of the things that we mentioned on the slides, just using technology to communicate, thinking about those even visual ways of writing stories that really require a lot of critical thinking and technical skill. Any kind of storytelling. We have many programs through CPS around like debate, really using critical literacy and language skills to persuade. Artistic kinds of programs, any artistic kind of program that your child is engaged in, whether it be drama, theater, music, it's all of that is so literacy rich in many ways.
And I feel like those programs are everywhere in our communities, right? In Pilsen Little Village, we have Yolocali, which does art and storytelling with teens, so they do exist. I think sometimes we just need to do a little bit more research on these programs, or even us, maybe we could share it a little bit more on our CPS website or our parent university website as well, because they do exist. And I think kids get more involved, especially when it's related to their neighborhood, right? So they might be more enticed to go because it's something that it's driven through neighborhood work.
And I think the One Summer Chicago website is a good source for that as well. I'm not 100% sure, but you may be able to search by region in some way to be able to find opportunities in your community. But that's one thing I would encourage is just, oftentimes we as parents are thinking very traditionally about what reading and writing looks like.
Yes. And it's changed a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Dr. Fleming, I have a question from Nicole from John Elementary. And she says, as it isn't covered in most teacher prep programs, can you describe CPS's effort to train and support current teachers in learning the science of reading?
I saw that question, Christina, and if it's okay, I'd like to just share my slide for just 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you for this question, because this is a big topic in reading circles right now, and it's a big focus of our conversation in Chicago Public Schools in terms of literacy instruction. Is that showing okay, Christina?
Yeah, we're good.
So this is a question about the science of reading, and the science of reading is really, focusing on a long history of very strong reading research that tells us about how young children, well, really all of us, learn to read. And CPS is definitely focused on the science of reading when we think about reading development and in the kinds of professional learning that we provide to teachers around reading instruction. So we have at the moment a multi-department, really cross-district initiative with all of the networks in the district that's called the Early Literacy Collaborative. And we provide professional learning to pre-K through second grade teachers district-wide that includes instruction, professional learning around the science of reading. Our definition of balanced literacy in CPS really focuses on two components, research-based components on how students learn to read. One is that we must ensure that students have access to systematic and explicit phonics instruction. And by that, I mean, we're teaching students the sound structure of the language and how that applies to letters and word parts and their meanings. So really a strong foundation in the code cracking, essentially, as it applies to reading. Simultaneously with that, we want to combine that with the reading of rich and engaging texts and lots of discussion around challenging books that are at students' grade level. What we're doing is we're simultaneously developing students' accuracy and fluency in reading, but attending also to their language development and their reading comprehension. So once students are able to crack the code and able to read fluently, we now have strong comprehension skills to pair that with, and students are sort of ready to fly. So it's really important to think about this combination of skills. And the science of reading is really refocusing our attention on that aspect of explicit, systematic, foundational skills instruction, ensuring that students have the tools that they need to read accurately and fluently, and then combining that with reading rich, engaging, challenging texts so that students develop strong reading comprehension.
Thank you. And I have, it's now, I believe, 4:48, and I want to check the Q&A part to ask questions from there. And we have one, Yana, she is from Chalk Beach, Chicago, and she has a question. She says, in this year of remote learning, how is Chicago Public Schools judging where students are in reading levels, particularly for the important younger reading years? I know this is a conversation that we've started having with our principals and our network chiefs this week.
It's a great question, Yana. Hello. So you may be familiar that in the beginning of the year for CPS, we did do some kind of modification of our assessment recommendations to adapt to remote learning for the beginning of the year. But our middle of the year assessment administration is sort of standard. So we are back in business for collecting middle of the year and end of year data as planned to ensure that we have access to information about where students are in their reading development trajectories. Now, I'll admit there are challenges to remote implementation of some of our assessment tools. And so we're encouraged that for many students, we'll be able to administer end of year assessments in person. We are also in the process right now of planning for summer learning. And we will be doing additional for students who enroll in our summer bridge programs, be doing additional assessments to ensure that we know where students are and that we can kind of pick up on that reading trajectory. So I don't want to, I want to acknowledge that for teachers, certainly it's been challenging, I think, to administer assessments remotely, but we were able in the beginning of the year to assess, I want to say about 70% of students in the early grades, and we will have back in our 95 to 100% range for assessment for middle of the year and even more for end of the year. So we're back on track with our assessment plan, and I'm encouraged that we're going to have, strong data to be able to tell where students are. We do know that for CPS data, and this is not unique to CPS, but nationally, that we are seeing a dip in terms of students being at benchmark for the early grades. And so we're putting together a summer learning plan that is really doubling down on early literacy, really focusing on strong, explicit foundational skills instruction. We know that many students are going to need a boost up with respect to those reading, accuracy, and fluency skills. And that is part of the summer learning plan with a really strong focus on the primary grades. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. And then someone just had a clarifying question. When you are referencing Lucy, or are you referencing Lucy Calkins' units of study when you say units of study?
No, I'm sorry. No. Thank you for that clarification. No, so for the Skyline curriculum, we have built this curriculum from scratch. So this is a curriculum that we've been working with Pacific Consulting Group, which is a very experienced group of curriculum developers. And we're designing curriculum specifically for CPS. So it's not the Calkins units of study. I'm sorry, I confused that. But the English language arts curriculum is organized in units around a compelling essential question. So it's not teaching reading and writing in isolation of really strong content. Many of these units are also aligned with our social science and science units, so that students are kind of getting a double dose of content vocabulary and are digging even deeper on science phenomena and other concepts. But this is a unique curriculum. It's a brand new curriculum that's being designed specifically for Chicago. And one thing I want to add with respect to, because I know this is a question related to balanced literacy, is that the Skyline curriculum does include a very strong, systematic, and explicit scope and sequence with respect to foundational skills for K through 5th grade. And it's designed on, if you're, Yana might be familiar with the Ed Reports, which is an organization that rates curriculum. It's designed on the scope and sequence for one of the highest rated curricula in the country, CKLA. So we will have a curriculum in the coming year that is very much grounded in the science of reading, but will also expose students to rich, contemporary, diverse texts and engage them in units of study with interesting questions that they can explore, think about, debate, and write about.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming, so much. It's now 4:55. And thank you for answering all the questions that we had from parents. And I know some of them were probably educators on our chat as well. But before the session ends today, can I ask you to share 3 main points that you would like our participants to remember, to take back with them from today's session?
I know you asked for 3, Christina, but I'm going to give you 4, and it's really
I think I know what 4 you're going to say, because it was all over your PowerPoint presentation. And
absolutely, just want to
go ahead, Dr. Fleming.
You could probably do it for me, Christina.
No,
but
go ahead. I'm going to let you.
More reading, more writing, more talking, more thinking. That's really what we want to focus on. Keep it simple. Have fun. We want to bring back the joy of reading and writing. We know this has been a tough year. But we really want moving into the summer and into next school year to really just be engaging as a community of readers and writers, bring back the joy and the love of literacy. And we'll be focusing on that through the summer and the coming year.
And I'm going to throw an extra question. What are you reading right now?
Oh my gosh. So this is kind of a tiny bit embarrassing, but not really. I probably have not read an adult novel in several years. That's probably a lie. I mean, I read a lot of academic texts, but I read very, very many children's books. And so one that I have, I always have several at the ready, but this is called The Last Day of Summer by Lamar Giles. And it's kind of out of my genre. It's a little bit of a science fiction fantasy about two boys who are, having fun in the neighborhood over the summer and encounter, some supernatural sort of science fiction kinds of folks invading the neighborhood. So.
I love the cover. I love the cover. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by the cover, but I love the cover. And will you fail me if I tell you I do audiobooks now? Because of being a mom, I'm so busy with two little kids that sometimes I just, while I'm cooking, put in my headphones and listen to audiobooks. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
21st century literacy, audiobooks, podcasts, again, whatever interests you, whatever interests students, kind of just any of that immersion in language and literacy is all good for reading and writing development, 100%.
Great. I feel so much better because I'm a big fan of podcasts, and audiobooks is the only thing I've been doing lately because it's what I have time for. So thank you so much, Dr. Fleming, for all the information you provided for us today. I enjoyed learning. I learned so much. I feel more prepared as a mom going to bedtime today and like looking at what other activities I could do with my little one during the summer. So thank you again so much for being with us and being a part of our X to Expert series.
You're welcome, and thanks to you, Christina, for hosting so expertly, and thanks to the whole FACE team for the invitation to join. Appreciate everybody who was able to join on the meet today.
Great, thank you, and see you everybody at our next session next week. Hope you can join us. Have a good night.